Coping with COVID and In It Together SC present Wellness Wednesday, brought to you by the Diabetes Action Council of South Carolina and DHEC's Division of Diabetes and Heart Disease Management.
Coping with COVID with Trey Taylor.
You're watching Coping with COVID, updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. We are streaming live on the Tailor Made production page on Facebook. Please go over there and hit like and share and follow. Not only will you be able to get notifications on when to watch Coping with COVID Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you'll also get all of your COVID-related updates. So much great information on that page. We're also streaming live on YouTube. Want to say hi to all you YouTubers. Thank you so much for joining us. And please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Listen, under the interview, you'll see a scroll that has so many great pieces of information, COVID-related information, where you can get your test, where you can get your vaccination, financial resources. Please make sure you check that out if you need it, or maybe if you know someone else who needs it. And please continue to post and share this information out so we can get the message to the masses. It's Epilepsy Awareness Month, and we're talking today about epilepsy survivors and also support groups. Right now, we're going to bring up Dr. Rakale Quarells. She's an associate professor of the community health and preventative medicine at the Morehouse School of Medicine, and also leads the epilepsy research team at MSF. Now, she's received funding from federal and private services from the work that she does in the epilepsy community. And if all of that isn't enough, don't you love Black Girl Magic? She's also an adjunct associate professor in the Rollins School of Public Health at Emory University and the member of the Professional Advisory Board of the Epilepsy Foundation of Georgia. Rakale, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Listen, first I want to ask you, what made you interested in researching and studying epilepsy? Was it a personal reason?
It actually wasn't. I was approached by a colleague, another psychologist from Emory, who asked me to join in on a research study. But ironically, if I can share a personal story,
yes, please.
In talking to my father about epilepsy and the research that I had been doing, he then revealed to me that he had seizures as a child. I had never heard this before, but that speaks to the stigma that's associated with epilepsy and that people don't talk about it in their families.
Right. And I was going to say that you didn't know because nobody said anything. Did you ever see him have a seizure?
So he only had them as a child.
Oh, okay.
So as he grew older, he never had another seizure.
Wow.
But he never mentioned it at all until I began to talk to him about the research that I was doing. And I was talking to him, and he shared, oh yeah, I used to have seizures as a child.
Wow. Now, did he have epilepsy, Doctor?
I don't know that he was diagnosed, but what makes me think that maybe there was a diagnosis, and this is back in the 40s.
Oh, wow.
So he said they called them spells, and his legs would tremor at night. He had them mostly at nighttime. And so those are seizures. The way that he was describing them to me, those were seizures, leg tremors happening only at nighttime. And and they describe them as spells.
That's interesting because this speaks to, and I'm glad, that we're talking about this. This speaks to the evolution even of how we understand, talk about, diagnose epilepsy, because it went from having spells to actually being a condition. So can we talk a little bit about the history of epilepsy? Because I've heard that before.
Well, it's you're right. There's been this evolution where I think that there's the scientific evolution where we learn more about this brain disorder.
Yeah.
So, keeping in mind that it is a brain disorder and that we liken a seizure to an electrical storm in the brain, that the synapses and they're not firing in balance.
Okay.
But what we also understand is that because communities don't understand epilepsy, these myths or these long-standing thoughts about it continue. I mean, so I have heard and being out and talking to people about epilepsy, people, believing that it's a demon.
I was going to say that witchcraft, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Girl, one of the.
Yeah.
Listen to me. I distinctly remember as a kid going to see The Exorcist. What was her name? I can't remember, Linda Green or whatever her name is. Handz. But that's the kind of thing that we've seen and we liken to when we can't understand what's going on.
Exactly. And you have that in cultures around the world. I mean, so epilepsy affects people around the world. 65 million people around the world are affected with epilepsy. And different cultures see it differently. I mean, there's a book, When a Spirit Catches You, You Fall Down. And it's about the Hmong child who had epilepsy and how they were treated because they saw it as a spirit and as a good thing. That meant the child was blessed.
Wow.
And so when the doctors wanted to treat the child and end up, the medication can make you very drowsy, and it's a very strong medication, especially back then, the phenobarbital that they were giving way back then. And the families didn't want to use that medication because it changed the child. The child wasn't themselves anymore, but it was suppressing everything so that the child wouldn't have the seizures. But the family didn't see the seizures as that bad.
Yeah.
But, it's how different cultures view this condition is what's can be the challenging part, because if it's seen as this negative thing because we don't understand it, then we're not able to support people in our families, in our community who have it, and then you're not able to help them. I'm working with people who have epilepsy. We think of it as this invisible disease. When you look at someone who has epilepsy, you can't tell that they have this disability. You can't tell until they have a seizure. And so helping people to understand the condition, but then more importantly, know what to do when they have a seizure.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. We're talking to Dr. Rakale Quarells. She's an associate professor of community health and preventative medicine at the Morehouse School of Medicine, where she leads amazing research on epilepsy. I'm Trey Taylor, and you're watching Coping with COVID. I want to say this before we go to the other things. That you had mentioned that in some cultures, people thought of it as almost spiritual, but I'm thinking it likens this to catching the Holy Spirit in church. The crying and screaming and the dancing, so to speak, and her name was Linda Blair. I was trying to think of the girl's name. But anyway, so even that is always been very confusing, a veil of mystery,
Yes. And it depends on the type of seizures that people have. Most people think that seizures are only those ones where people are falling down on the ground and convulsing and shaking, muscles twitching. That's not the only kind. That may be what most people think of, but there are different kinds of seizures depending on where the seizure is originating in the brain. Depending on which lobe of the brain, that will characterize a seizure. So some seizures are where people get this tingling feeling, where they kind of smell. They have this smell of burnt toast.
Oh wow!
And that's the famous one where they did the open surgery, open brain surgery, and when they touched that part of the brain, the person was like, "You smell something burning?" That was like one of the big breakthroughs in epilepsy surgery. But it's depending on where the seizure happens in the brain, because we know that the brain, different parts of the brain cover different activities in our body. And so that will dictate what the seizure looks like. And that's why it's sometimes difficult for people to be diagnosed, because if no one is around to see the seizure, then they can't describe what happened. And when the person who's having the seizure, they may not have any memory of the seizure. So, and the likelihood, when you go to a doctor, what's the likelihood of you actually being sick? When you go in.
Oh, exactly. You're never, yeah. Everything's fine. Everything's fine when you get to the doctor. And then when you walk back out, you're all of a sudden the symptoms come back.
Exactly.
Why does that happen?
So people don't have seizures in the doctor's office.
Can we get some funding for a study on that? I want to know that question.
So, but that actually contributes to the challenge of diagnosing epilepsy, because people won't necessarily, and seizures are unpredictable.
Yeah.
They don't happen every day all the time.
Also, are you born with epilepsy, or can it happen to you over time?
Great question. So some people are born with epilepsy, and some people develop it at different times in their lives. What we do know is that people, the two age groups that have the highest incidence of epilepsy, and that's the new diagnosis of epilepsy, are children and older adults.
Oh, wow.
So those are the two big groups, children being born with it and can be from a birth defect or the brain not developing properly in utero or afterwards. But then for seniors, sometimes the cause of epilepsy is related to a fall, traumatic brain injury, or a stroke. What people often don't put together is that the result of a stroke could result in developing epilepsy.
Wow.
And it's because that brain injury from the stroke then can have someone develop epilepsy.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because we rarely hear about epilepsy being a cause of, or stroke being the cause of someone developing epilepsy, which again speaks to why it's so important that we are so super conscientious and focused on our health, so that we don't have these other things that happen to us. We can have a quality health. Let me ask you this. You mentioned that your dad said he had it as a young person and then he stopped having it. Is that true with epilepsy? With the people, children who have it, they could kind of grow out of it, so to speak?
Yeah, but it may come back. Oh. So we started an epilepsy community advisory board, and one of our members had epilepsy as a child. Then by the time she became a teenager, she was no longer having seizures, but then the seizures came back when she was in her 20s, I believe.
Why would that happen, that you don't have it, then have it, then don't have it, then have it? What's going on in your brain that you don't know?
There is still a lot that we don't know about epilepsy.
Yeah.
There really is.
Well, the brain is such a fascinating,
It is. So. It really is. It's an amazing organ.
Yeah. We're talking to Dr. Rakale Quarells, Associate Professor of Community Health and Preventative Medicine at the Morehouse School of Medicine. We're talking about epilepsy, and it's been such a fascinating conversation. So tell us a little bit about the specifics of what you're studying, Dr. Quarells.
So we were looking at depression in epilepsy. What we know, epilepsy is such a challenging condition to live with. And the rates of depression in people with epilepsy are up to 55%.
Oh.
That's really high. Up to 1 in 2 people with epilepsy having depression.
So is depression a cause of epilepsy, or are people depressed because they have epilepsy?
You know what? That question is still being investigated. It's been raised. I think that the challenge of epilepsy, it's understandable, the development of depression, especially if you don't receive the mental health help that you need. And that's a whole nother issue that you've got this double stigma possibly going on, the stigma of epilepsy and then the stigma of mental illness. And both of them we don't talk about.
Yeah.
We don't talk freely about them.
We don't.
So Our study was looking at how we can reduce depression in people with epilepsy, in Blacks with epilepsy. So there was the Project Uplift was developed by my colleague Nancy Thompson at Emory University, and she had done the research and found that her program, which was this 8-week mindfulness-based cognitive therapy program that was delivered by phone in groups. So you had a group of people that come on together on a group conference call and talk for an hour each week for 8 weeks. And they were being taught mental health skills is what we're calling them. It's not a therapy session. It wasn't a support group, but we were teaching skills, mental health skills. And through over the 8 weeks, we saw that depression did decline in people with epilepsy. And as a result of the depression declining, what she found was then seizure frequency decline.
Wow.
And then you also have quality of life improving. And so if we can deal with the depression, we can improve the outcomes, the health outcomes of people with epilepsy. And so that's what our study was focused on. We focused specifically on Blacks because Nancy didn't have that many Blacks in her study. Right. And so we wanted to know, does it work for Black people? It may work for other cultures, but maybe it doesn't work for Blacks. And similarly, we have colleagues up at NYU who are also testing it in Hispanics.
Right. You know what the fascinating thing about this is, this speaks to so much more about how, if we as people of color would embrace mental health more, that our quality of life, not outside of epilepsy, would be so much better because we would have better coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We absolutely, and it's unfortunate that in our culture, in our families, our communities, that mental health is not embraced in any way that you can achieve it. So while, and when I'm speaking intentionally when I'm saying mental health being embraced, because in order to achieve mental health, you may need to go to therapy.
Yeah.
You may need to, participate and you may need medication.
Right. Yeah.
But we have to be open to what will work for us to be mentally healthy.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge in my family. And, I do the research, and my husband is a clinical psychologist and sees patients, but it's still a challenge. And getting our family on board.
Yeah, it is a cultural thing. And even how we're raised, even now, the unfortunate thing is we are still raising, for the most part, our children to don't talk about it, keep our business at home, pray.
Yep.
Pray.
Yeah.
And listen, I love God just like everybody else, girl.
Oh, absolutely.
I love God. And Dr. Cheryl Williams at Agape Counseling and Training Center, you know what I'm saying? So I there's so many things that go on with us because, like I said, spirituality is such an important part of our existence of our history. And then the other things, the other cultural things of hush, hush, don't say, crazy Uncle Bubba, he's up in the room upstairs, you don't say anything.
But you know what? I mean, what I'm happy about, though, is that I do see change in our faith-based institutions. I think about my church here in Atlanta. I'm at Elizabeth Baptist with Dr. Craig L. Oliver. And during COVID, when COVID first started, he brought psychologists in to talk about kind of what to do, how you're doing this as we were virtually meeting. Yeah. And I think about my pastor in my home church, Reverend Damon L. Lynch, who Damon Lynch III, I should say, because his father also has a church in, but New Prospect Baptist Church. He also acknowledges, and one of the associate pastors is a trained mental health counselor, in order to understand that, God blessed us with people who have skills that can help us.
Yeah.
So it's pray and then also do some work.
Exactly. We're talking to Dr. Rakale Quarells. She's over at the Morehouse School of Medicine, where she does research in epilepsy. Girl, since you're shouting out churches, I got to shout out mine too, because the counselor that I mentioned, Cheryl Williams with Agape Counseling and Training Center, she is a minister at my church, Brooklyn Baptist Church, and she heads the youth ministry. So I do agree. I do love that churches are embracing the mental health aspect, because it is so very important. But I thought that was so fascinating, the studies that you guys are doing in how epilepsy seemed to decrease in those folks who were at least talking and working it out.
We were surprised that seizure frequency went down.
Wow.
So we expected quality of life to get better, for them to be able to manage. When you are depressed, it's hard to do the things that you need to do.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so in order to manage your epilepsy, there are a number of things that you have to do, not just medication management, but there's seizure tracking. There are all of these different things, lifestyle things that you have to do to manage the epilepsy. And if you're depressed, you're less likely to do those self-management behaviors.
Right.
And so if we can improve the depression, then we're thinking absolutely we would improve their health outcomes, but we weren't expecting that seizure frequency would go down.
So now that you do see that, is there further research to see if there is a correlation between depression and epilepsy? Either for treatment or for causes.
Oh, absolutely. There is research looking at the relationship between depression and epilepsy. We already know that because because depression is so high in people with epilepsy, a lot of the epilepsy meds have mood stabilizers in them.
Oh, wow.
Because it's a known, depression is the top psychiatric comorbidity for people with epilepsy.
Wow.
That's one, and when I was saying that the numbers are really high, people are really a lot of people are having to deal with this. Yeah. And so you've got the medication, but then there are also behaviors and things, and that's what that Project Uplift, there are strategies that we can teach people in order to deal with the epilepsy. And deal with the depression, dealing with both, because the program actually teaches people about epilepsy, which we've learned that people don't know. Yeah. People don't understand their condition. And so not only does the family and the community not understand it, even a lot of the people who are diagnosed with epilepsy don't really understand their condition. And so the program teaches people about epilepsy and also depression. And it's delivered by phone, because if you've had a seizure in the last 6 months, you're not allowed to drive. So transportation is a huge problem for people with epilepsy.
Wow. So if you've had a seizure within the last 6 months, you can't drive because DMV.
You're putting yourself and others at risk. I cannot tell you how many people, when we are having these sessions, when I'm facilitating these sessions, how many people have talked about the number of car accidents that they've had, and before they got diagnosed. Because remember, when you have a seizure, a lot of times you don't know what happened.
Right.
So you wake up and you've had an accident, but you don't know why.
Which I'm sure adds to the depression, because you are totally dependent on somebody else.
And imagine if you developed epilepsy, say after you graduate from college and you're starting your life, you're independent, or even you have been living on your own for years.
Total
now
change in your lifestyle.
So it's understandable that people are dealing with depression. This is a really challenging condition. And I admire people who are dealing with it, managing it, and willing to speak out and share their story, like Kim Hardy and Natalie Beavers with those two organizations, where they're willing to share their stories.
Yeah.
Because that's what other people need to hear.
Yeah.
That all is not lost.
Right.
You can still live.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You can still thrive. Yeah. You may have to have some parameters put in place to protect you, but you can still live your life. No need for you to stay and just wait to die. No. That's not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What about African Americans or other? I know you said you did your study with African Americans. There was an NYU study. Do you see where it is more prevalent in one race as opposed to another?
Yeah. So I'm happy you asked that question. What we've seen in some studies is that Blacks have a higher lifetime prevalence of epilepsy. And unfortunately, Blacks are more likely to be diagnosed in an emergency room. Oh. And also, which means they're not getting regular care.
Exactly.
But then they're also less likely to see a specialist. So Blacks with epilepsy are more likely to just be treated by their primary care physician and not a neurologist, or even better, an epileptologist, someone who's trained specifically in epilepsy. It's a neurologist with specialty training in epilepsy. And so Blacks are less likely to be treated.
Is that because of lack of access to healthcare?
Yeah. And it also depends on where you live. I mean, you're not going to find epileptologists in rural America.
Right.
Unfortunately. And so we have people, I'm in Atlanta, and I work with epileptologists at Grady Hospital as well as at Emory, their brain health clinic. And they have people traveling from all across Georgia because there aren't many epileptologists in the state. There's some in excuse me, in Augusta, and I can't, I'm blanking on the name of the university over there. But yeah, there aren't very many. And so
Is it Payne College? Well, I can't.
No. It's
oh, don't worry about it, girl.
Yeah. But that to say that, oftentimes epileptologists and neurologists are only found in metro cities, in urban areas, not in rural areas.
Right.
And so that limits, that also affects the access to care.
Yeah. Has COVID affected epilepsy at all?
Yeah. People, and, so the challenge is 2/3 of people's seizures are controlled by medication. And if you're not getting in to see your doctor, then the medication may not be refilled.
Right.
And without the medication, then you are having breakthrough seizures. It's not really breakthrough because you've not taken it. If you're not able to get your medication, then that's one of the bigger triggers for a seizure, is if you miss your medication.
Right.
And so when, so we've talked about that, you have these few specialists that are available, but then when COVID hit and offices shut down, the wait list just got even longer.
Yeah.
And so then access to care is not about how far you live from the doctor, but it's like, when can they fit you in?
Yeah.
To get in there. And so that's even more of a challenge for people. And that's part of so that's where COVID came and caused some more challenges for people with epilepsy.
Dr. Rakale Quarells joins us. She's an associate professor of community health and preventative medicine at the Morehouse School of Medicine, where she has received funding from federal and private sources, leading the epilepsy research team there. Dr. Quarells, before you leave, I want to ask you about treatment for epilepsy. I know you talked a little bit about access to medication. We also talked about, making sure that your depression levels, your mental health is good. Tell us about some of the other treatments. What is the treatment plan for those folks with epilepsy? And is it the same for everyone?
Oh, no, it's not. It depends on where the seizures are originating. So I was saying that there are two different types of, where the seizure hits in the brain. And so, your brain has two halves, right? Two hemispheres. And so if your seizure hits in one particular spot, that's a focal seizure. If the seizure is happening all over, that's a generalized seizure. Sometimes it can start as a focal seizure and then spread to the other side, and that becomes a generalized seizure. And so it depends on where the seizure is happening in the brain that will dictate the treatment.
Okay.
So there's surgery is an option. Brain surgery is an option.
Does brain surgery cure it?
It depends. So if they can pinpoint them, they will only do surgery if they know exactly where the seizure is happening. So if you only have a seizure happening in that one spot and they remove that one spot, then you won't have a seizure again. And we have a lot of people who have had that cure. Okay. Where after brain surgery, they no longer have any seizures. But then we have...
Go ahead. No, I just wanted to ask, how easy or difficult is it to find out where the seizure, determine where the seizure is being?
It's not an easy process. Yeah. It's a long process because there's going to be monitoring, because they want to know exactly where they're going in, because they're going in your brain. So then you can't take that lightly. So it's a process that people have to go through in order to determine whether or not they are a good candidate for brain surgery.
Even that,
Yep. But keep in mind that people don't only have, some people have seizures that occur in different parts of their brain. And so when I think about Natalie, the person we were talking about, where she had brain surgery, but then started having other seizures because they were coming from a different place from where their brain surgery was done.
Yeah.
And so brain surgery is an option, and it works well for some. It may not be an option for some people. And so for others, there are devices that can be implanted in the brain. There's the DNS, which is the vagal nerve stimulator, that is implanted. And there are a couple of different, because there's the RNS, the VNS. There's also
you're over our heads now, girl.
I know, but there are devices that can be implanted in the brain in order to shoot electrical signals and control some of the seizure activity that's happening. Okay. So there's medication, and I said that 2/3 of people who have epilepsy are being treated by meds alone. But then you also have the devices. You also have brain surgery as an option.
Right.
And some children can sometimes be successful with diet, the ketogenic diet.
I was going to ask that. Does food affect it at all?
It can. Different people have different triggers for their seizures. And so that's part of the self-management, knowing what your triggers are. We know general triggers are stress, sleep deprivation, but it may be, like the strobe lights. That only affects about 3% of the people.
It actually sounds like migraines.
So, it's interesting. They're both treated by neurologists, obviously, but that some of the medication is the same.
Similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. We've been having a fascinating conversation today about epilepsy with one of the leading researchers, Dr. Rakale Quarells. She's an associate professor of community health and preventative medicine at the Morehouse School of Medicine, where she leads the epilepsy research team and has received funding in federal and private sources for the work that she does in the epilepsy community. She's also an adjunct associate professor in the Rollins School of Public Health at Emory University and a member of the Professional Advisory Board for the Epilepsy Foundation of Georgia. Thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for this great conversation. This has been so fascinating. And it's our hope just to bring awareness about epilepsy, lower the stigma so that we can recognize that we're all different. We all have something with us. But the good thing about it is there is treatment, there is help. We just have to identify, kind of what's going on and embrace whatever it is, good, bad, indifferent. Just embrace it, because until we recognize we've got a condition, we can't do anything about it.
True.
We cannot do anything about it. Coming up, we're going to talk to some epilepsy survivors, some people in and around our community, as we continue our conversation about Epilepsy Awareness Month. Thank you so much, Dr. Quarells. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for doing this and inviting me. Have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely, you too.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Aiken Cockrum. I was Miss America in 1994. As a result of that, I had to learn at a very early age that it's important to take care of my health, to get enough rest, to eat a balanced diet, and to get exercise. Those are principles that I still live by today. Take a moment to visit inittogethersc.org to take an online test to find out if you're at risk of prediabetes, and how to join a diabetes prevention program that takes the guesswork out of losing weight, eating better, and being more active. You can learn new ways to stay healthy and sustain those changes over time. When you join, you'll get support from a trained lifestyle coach to help you set and achieve realistic goals. Go to inittogethersc.org. Brought to you by the Diabetes Action Council of South Carolina.
Do you have a gamer on your Christmas list? Computers Unique can fill their Christmas wish. Do you have a student or designer that needs something special? Stop by Computers Unique Dutch Square Mall for all your holiday gift needs. Gaming laptops and desktops, the iMac and Mac Pro Apple laptops, plus the new curved monitors are all at Computers Unique. And with prices starting at $175, everyone can get their Christmas wish from Computers Unique Dutch Square Mall. Call 803-351-5821 for Computers Unique.
The Comet gives me a reliable source of transportation.
It's very convenient to me, and they have wonderful drivers.
It's clean, and it builds community. It's fun to meet people.
It makes me feel like really independent. It's just fun.
It's always going to be there, and it gets me everywhere I need to go.
We try to ride every single day. Comedy is our livelihood.
We're talking about epilepsy today, what it is, why it is, how you can overcome it. And our next guest is certainly a testament to that. As someone who has epilepsy, Kim Hardy founded the Handz Epilepsy Foundation in 2015 after decades of frustration and misunderstanding that accompanied her epilepsy diagnosis. It's a faith-based nonprofit that educates, advocates, and supports those who are living with epilepsy, particularly in the African American community. In 2019, Kim wrote her first in a series of books, Adventures of Wally and Kimmy. I was going to show you mine, but the kids have it. Wally to the rescue, to help explain to kids how epilepsy can affect them and their loved ones. It's a beautiful series. In 2021, Kim created the Purple Table Talk with Jen Von Cherry. The online forum covers real issues related to life with epilepsy. Kim's life work is fighting for those with epilepsy to have a more equitable community in South Carolina. Kim, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you. Beautiful.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, you've been out here, as we said, in your intro, for a long, long time. And I've seen you out there working it, So first of all, congratulations, because, it's one thing to have a condition or be passionate about something. It's a whole nother thing than to advocate for it, So congratulations. I want to know, though, Kim, why do you think African Americans are an underserved or overlooked population in the epilepsy community?
This is a question I like to answer because it's such a backstory behind a condition with epilepsy. And I wouldn't even just box it in with the African American community. You be Caucasian or whatever. The stigma behind epilepsy is back in the, let's go slave days and stuff like that. When you had epilepsy, it was considered you had a demon on you or something like that, and you would be put in a mental institute. Now you fast forward to 2021, people are not educated on what epilepsy is. You look at stuff like cancer and stuff like that. You you know what that is. Epilepsy, you can't find it on an X-ray, you can't find it on a CT or stuff like that. So it, as quick as it happens, it doesn't leave any footprints afterwards. So when you're going into the work field and stuff like that, and you hear epilepsy, oh, somebody could fall out and hit their head, now you become a liability. So people tend to not disclose that they have epilepsy because they don't want to lose their jobs, or they don't want to be looked at like something's wrong with you or something like that. So a lot of those old mentalities continue today.
Yeah. Tell us about your journey, Kim. When did you find out that you had epilepsy?
I was in a car accident with my grandmother, my aunt, and my baby sister. She was an arm baby at the time. And I hit my head. I had a concussion.
Wow.
And
how old were you?
I was 6.
Oh, okay. You're a baby.
Yeah,
You're a baby yourself.
Yeah. I was 6 going on 7. So it was my birthday's in September. So it was the summertime when the accident happened. And I had a knot right here in the middle of my head, and from there, little stuff started gradually happening. I went from perfect 20/20 vision to having to get glasses. My attention span wasn't that long in class. I was always getting in trouble about my grades or something. I wasn't a bad kid as far as school goes, but it was my attention span and my grades weren't good. We couldn't figure out why. So then fast forward to about 9 or 10 was when I actually had my first Grandma Seizure. However, I think I was always having the staring seizures where you stare off into space and stuff like that in class and everything. But I had my first Grandma Seizure. They related it to me playing video games because I was playing a video game, Sonic the Hedgehog, the graphics and stuff. And my mom started noticing I had, at that time, it would have been, by the time I had the third one, I was extremely moody on that third one. And I was like, I fussed at my bike. I fussed with my sister. My mom wasn't feeling good. And it was just, I was never diagnosed right.
Right.
So it wasn't until recently that I was actually diagnosed because all my seizures would change.
Really?
Gaps. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So how old were you? How old were you when you had that first seizure, when they thought it was Sonic the Hedgehog?
I was 9. I was about 9 or 10. And then it was 3 years before I had another one, 2 years before I had the third one. And that's when they finally said, okay, well, you've had 3. You have juvenile epilepsy is what they called it. And, I thought it was juvenile epilepsy because I was a kid.
You were juvenile, yeah.
Yeah, they now call it partial seizures. So they thought I would grow out of it. And at times it looked like it did. So they started gradually pulling me off. Every time they pull me off, I have to get back on the medicine, which also made me scared to drive. So I didn't get my driver's license until I was 25.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So you said you started having the grandma seizures. What does that look like for those of us, I'll say us, that don't exactly know what that type of seizure looks like?
The grandma seizure is what, for those that know what seizures are.
Yeah.
Are the jerking, the shaking.
I got you. So that's more of a seizure that we would.
One.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the commonly known one. You have also, like I was saying, the staring seizure. Forgive me, I can't think of the clinical word for it right now, but that is where you can. Me and you are having a conversation now, and you could be talking to me, and then all of a sudden I just stop. 5 seconds later, I'm back, and I don't remember nothing we talked about.
Oh wow!
It can happen just that quick. It'll just look like I'm staring into space. So. You're hanging with your girlfriends. You sit there, are you serious? What do you mean you don't remember? So
Kim, did they attribute the epilepsy to your hitting your head when you were in the car accident at 6 years old? Or was it? Okay.
Not at first. It was a lot of it is me doing my research. Okay, so this is common in my family.
Oh, did you know? But you didn't know that at the time.
No, we didn't.
Well, at 6, you don't know anything.
No, we didn't. I had a great uncle that used to have seizures, but he was also a drinker. He was an alcoholic, so they contributed that to his drinking.
Oh, drunk, drunk Uncle Ike.
Yep. But his grandson had seizures too. His would switch up like mine. All of us had head injuries.
Wow.
So it's something I tell my family: if you get a concussion, please monitor yourself. Please make sure your doctors know, because it's in our family. I compare my seizure to a volcano. They lay dormant. Some may never erupt.
Yeah.
Some will, but
that's a great case for people really delving into their family medical background, because I think there are things that we just don't know. Some things you might know, you may have heard about, but not only for yourself, but if you plan on getting married, having children, these are things you need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And the crazy thing is, in African American community, in our families, we do not talk about things. What goes on in the house stays in the house.
Yep.
And I have cousins that live right down the road from my grandmother, whose grandchildren have seizures, and none of us knew. And we're close-knit family, so it's crazy.
Yeah, we're talking to Kim Hardy. She's with Hardy Handz Epilepsy Foundation. So you mentioned that you were on medication. How long were you on? Are you still on? And what other types of treatments were you taking?
I've been on several different medications. Some I was on for way too long and have caused other problems within my body, being a female. There's a lot of things that at the time that I was on these medications that there were no warnings for the bottles. So, for women with epilepsy, it can cause us to not be able to have kids or to have early menopause, which I'm full-blown menopausal at 40 now. It actually was 35 when I was diagnosed with menopause. So, it's just a lot of things. The medication, I'm not on anything now. I'm taking CBD oil. It's been the best thing because my body needs to start rejecting medicines. So they don't work for me anymore.
So are you doing it? How are you? Are you doing it topically? Are you ingesting it? Are you smoking it? How are you
I do the oil under the tongue.
Oh, wow. And you find that that's working well for you?
It's working well. The oil I use is Charlotte's Web, which is, if anybody does their research, you'll find that it's like the best thing for those of us with epilepsy. Is also a story behind that oil, which is a long story, but the girl that it was named after, Charlotte, who is since passed on, she had epilepsy, and the CBD oil is what helped her.
Oh, wow. So when did you decide that you wanted to start a foundation, and why? Because like I said at the top of the show, it's one thing to have something. It's another thing then to say, I want to do something about it,
Well, that story, I told you that my seizures tend to change up. And I started having them in my sleep. And the nocturnal seizures are the most dangerous because you can have them and not wake up from them.
Right.
So my body was slowly shutting down unexplainably. My blood pressure was up. My blood sugar was dropping. I almost passed out a few times at church. But one thing that I couldn't work for a while because I was having them so frequently. So one thing I continued to do was go to church on Sundays. And I asked my doctor one time, she looked at me, she said, I honestly don't know how you're sitting in front of me right now. Which at the time, my instant reaction was, because God's not finished with me yet.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But then when I started thinking about it, I was like, she just said I am not supposed to be here. Oh my gosh. So I had a little moment. But I was sitting in church and swear I was listening to everything my pastor said, and then God spoke Hardy Handz to me right there. And I was like, yeah, really? I'm supposed to do this. Didn't know nothing about nonprofits, how to start one or nothing. But he said move, and I moved. So
yeah,
birthed Hardy Handz.
Yeah. So at the time, what did God tell you was the purpose for doing the nonprofit?
Well, because going back to talking to my doctor, I was telling her, it's expensive to have epilepsy.
Mm-hmm.
The treatments and stuff, oftentimes people have to choose between getting medicines and paying their bills. So, and I was telling her, I was like, is there any assistance programs or something? And she said, I really think you need a support group. So look online and see if you can find anything here in the state.
Right.
Well, there was nothing. There was
nothing.
Here.
Oh, wow.
North Carolina, the closest I found was Atlanta, but that wasn't when I was doing the research.
So there was no nonprofit support group, anything like that for epilepsy back in, I think, 2015 when you
it was
launched it?
Yeah, 2015 when I was looking, and no, there wasn't anything.
Wow.
I got plenty of stuff in Texas, California, Maryland, but nothing here.
Yeah. So you launched the nonprofit, and the goal was, like you said, just basically a support group. How did you find the folks in your community, in the epilepsy community?
It's still gradual, but going to going to the events and being a vendor and just talking to people is gradually how I'm meeting folks and coming to. Now the problem is, my first goal was always to start the support group. Got everything set up, but to have the support group, they have to have people to support to be able to support.
The support group needed support.
Right. So, anytime you say support group, therapy or something, it's just like we head for the hills. Don't nobody want to do nothing. Yeah. And I was just like, y'all, I'm here. But I feel like in due season, God will bring them and I'll be ready. So
yeah. And you know what? You're right, Kim. Listen, you were obedient. You did what the Lord told you to do. And now you do the work and just trust God to bring what and whoever is supposed to come.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how me and my partner Javon met, because she has epilepsy. We are supporting each other through it.
Now, how did you meet Javon? Right. How did you meet her? And she's the sister that you do the Purple Table Talk with. That's
correct.
Let's talk about that. How did you meet her?
We met in at an event in Atlanta for the foundation that's in Atlanta, and we sat at the same table. It's just so funny how it came about. We were sitting at the same table. Little did we know we were both from South Carolina. She's from Charleston. I'm from Columbia, but she went to school at Benedict.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we just started talking, and I heard her story when she went to talking, and she heard mine, and from there we clicked, and we would speak off and on, but we would always see each other in Atlanta. And then she knew I had started my foundation, so when she was ready to start hers, we reached out to each other, and then we started talking. Well, I want to do this for a Purple Day in March. You want to jump on and do a live with me? And she was like, yeah. So from there,
Purple Table Talk was born, huh?
Yep.
So tell me about the concept. I mean, everybody knows about Jada's Red Table Talk. Is it kind of based on that loosely?
It would have been if it wasn't through COVID. So it's kind of a virtual Purple Table Talk. You just have to get the vision, Purple Table in the room. But the concept is just two ladies with epilepsy sharing their story. We're not medical people that can give you the terminologies and stuff like that. Sometimes I can't even remember them thanks to my epilepsy. We're just having two girls having regular conversation with people, or just us, and just letting people know what our journeys have been.
Yeah. And when can people check out the Purple Table Talk?
We do Purple Table Talk usually the second and third, or second and fourth Saturday of the month. And we're revamping. We're on hiatus right now, so we'll start back up in January.
Awesome.
On Facebook and YouTube.
At Facebook and YouTube. This is Kim Hardy Handz Epilepsy Foundation. The foundation, the Purple Table Talk, and the books. So tell me about the books.
The book came about the same way the foundation came about. I was sitting in church listening to my pastor, Kenneth B. Ratliff, talk, and all of God said, write a book. I said, you playing. So again, me being obedient, I connected with a former coworker, a good friend of mine who does ghostwriting, and she helped me format my book. I had it already written out. She just helped me format it. I got with Eric Cusack, who did my illustrations, and used Wally as my guinea pig.
And I was going to ask, so how did you come up with the concept? Because, okay, you write a book. How did you realize you should write a children's book? And then how did you figure out, okay, let me incorporate my dog in this book?
Well, I was always looking for something to connect with the kids, because one thing that the kids will come up to me, especially teenagers. I'm still working with the teenagers, but they love the book too. So I was trying to think of something. How do I reach the kids? And we're hearing a lot about bullying, but bullying comes from people not understanding. So why not educate the school system? So I said, well, let me write a children's book. Let's make my book a children's book. Because everybody was saying, write your own biography. I'm not quite there yet. So when I was having my seizures in my sleep, my bedroom was downstairs. I stayed with my parents and they were upstairs. Well, I was downstairs, and the only person in the room with me at the time I had a seizure was Wally. I was in my bed, and when I woke up, I was laying a different way, but his paw was on my arm, and he was looking at me.
Wow.
And from that day until I was able to go back to work, Wally never left my side. I couldn't go to the bathroom without the dog hitting me in my leg. So Wally was my support. He was always there when I had the seizure. He wouldn't leave me.
Wow.
So I said, let's make ourselves kids. I'll make him a puppy, and I make me little Kim or Kimmy.
Kimmy and Wally.
Wally to the rescue.
Yeah. I love that. So how many more books are in the series? Adventures of Kimmy and Wally.
Second one now is I had a little writer's block. And I've got so many ideas and concepts of where I could take it. It's just I don't know where to go next.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm thinking I'm finally, this outline that I've got now is going to work, and hopefully the second book will be out next year.
Okay, that'll be great. And you don't know how many you'll do. You're just going to keep them going as long as you have ideas.
Yeah. At minimum, I'll say 5, but I want to keep it going. It's a lot I can do with it. So, turn Wally into a support dog, and sit him through
because
that
there are such things as support dogs, right?
Yeah, and technically he's considered a support dog. He just hasn't been through the training,
right? Because
a lot of support dogs, they'll go up under the person's head to keep them from hitting their head on the floor. So yeah.
So, but you didn't have him to become a support dog. He just took it upon himself to become one, right?
Yes. Well, if you look at it, you said you had a dog once upon a time, right?
I had 3 dogs at a time.
Okay. So when you got sick, were they not up under you all the time?
Oh yeah. Very conscientious about. Yeah.
And that's how
dogs are very intuitive. They really are.
I love it. Yeah. And he's like a kid anyway. Gets on my nerves.
That's your baby. That is your baby. Kim Hardy with Handy. Hardy Handz Epilepsy Foundation joins us. So Kim, what do you need the public to know about epilepsy?
I just really want people to know that, although you may not understand, and nobody will fully understand our journey unless they've been through it themselves. But I just really want people to know the importance of being supportive versus being scared or, just not fully understanding. I'm helping somebody with a condition that you may not understand or anything. It's not anything you can catch.
Right.
We've had people ask us, so you can catch it? No, you can't catch it. Something you can catch. It's not a cold. We just need love and support, and just to really educate yourself on what to do if somebody has a seizure, because people have had seizures in public and gotten wallets and stuff stolen from them. So.
Oh my God! Get out of here! Are you serious, Kim? Wow.
Yeah. Wow. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. And as far as loved ones, people who are family members and friends, and even co-workers of someone with epilepsy, what do they need to do? How can they help?
You mean during the seizure or anything?
Both, before, during, and after. Yeah.
Okay, so during the seizure, the important thing to do is not stick anything into the person's mouth.
Right.
That is an old tale. Please don't do that no more. You can get hurt, or that person can lose teeth.
Yeah.
So we cannot swallow our tongue. So the most important thing, but we can choke. So make sure we're on our side when we're having a seizure, and try to keep us from hitting our head. But other than that, don't restrain us. Don't hold us. Just be supportive. If you're around a group of people, try to get them back, because the large crowds, we're going to be upset when we come out of it. It might be crying. We may lose control of our bodily functions. Because I know I've often peed on myself during a seizure. Just be careful, because our hands can go flailing and stuff, and we don't have control of our body at that time.
Yeah.
So just if it goes any longer than 5 minutes, then call the ambulance.
Okay.
I know I tell my people, if it's not longer than 3 to 5 minutes, I'm good. I don't need that bill. They're not going to find anything anyway. So
right.
But
right.
Some people don't know. But the best thing to do if it's a stranger, go ahead and call 911.
Now I know that you do your Purple Walk every year. Tell me about the walk and how else people can support the foundation.
Well, the Purple Warrior Walk for Epilepsy, this was our first year doing it, but it's going to continue. And it was the first weekend in November, and it was the coldest weekend, but it's okay. God got us through it. It didn't rain. And so we had about 50 or 60 people, and it was a great turnout. They walked almost 2 miles. They kind of got lost, but it's okay. We got it back. It was an adventure for the first time, but everybody was great. It was fun. We had a ball. So they can support. I have a donation button on the Hearty Handz Foundation page. I also have my Cash App, which is $KH8137. So they can do that. PayPal, of course, Hearty Handz, and I'm on Instagram as well.
All right, so people can go to Hearty Handz Foundation, go to the website and find out more information. What's next? You doing a lot? You know, the walk, the books, the Purple Table Talk, the foundation. What's next?
Well, I'm wanting to do a probably in the summertime. I want to do a kind of a support dog kind of community event. But March is Purple Day. March 26th, which is a Saturday, is Purple Day, and we're gonna do something special. I haven't finalized everything just yet, but I'm gonna make sure I keep you informed.
Please do. I was gonna say that. Please let me know so that I can help support and promote what you're doing. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to come on and talk to us. I'm such a fan, and love the books, and like I said, Kim, I just think it's beautiful that you are not just experiencing something, but you're really out there on the battlefield, so to speak, helping other people, not only that have epilepsy, but like I said, family, friends, loved ones, co-workers that know someone, that work with someone, that are familiar with someone that have epilepsy, because as you said, there's such a shroud of secrecy and, surrounding it. But listen, we've got to become aware of it because it's out here.
Exactly. It's not going anywhere.
Right.
There's no
all right
for it.
Again, you can see the information on the screen to support Kim with her Hearty Handz Foundation. Kim, thank you again so much for joining us today. Good luck to you.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Coping with COVID and In It Together SC present Wellness Wednesday, brought to you by the Diabetes Action Council of South Carolina and DHEC's Division of Diabetes and Heart Disease Management.
Coping with COVID with Trey Taylor.